Some people move into a new house and hear strange noises. Others see things they can't explain. Today's two stories are about people who saw and heard things that they swore actually happened and were totally real. Is it a fiction or is it a horrifying reality? You decide. Welcome to Mrs. Upside Down channel, and today I'm going to tell you two terrifying haunted house stories that I hope you will enjoy listening to. If you are a fan of paranormal activities, spooky mysteries, then you have come to the right place. Grab a cup of tea or coffee, kill the lights, and let's dive into the upside down world. The first time I heard the stomping, I thought someone was running up the basement stairs. The second time, I realized it was not a person. The third time, the entire house shook. There were 6 stomps, always 6, and each time the basement door flew open by itself. This happened in a house in Trout Creek, Montana, in the summer of 2005. I didn't believe in ghosts then. I'm still not sure that I do now. But I have never been able to explain what happened in that basement. One day, my friend Dave called me and told me that he had a ghost. I thought he was joking. Dave's bedroom was in the basement of his house. According to him, one night he had come upstairs, closed the basement door, and walked away. A few seconds later, the door flew open. He shut it again. Then, he heard something coming up the stairs. Heavy stomping. The door opened a second time. I didn't believe him. Neither did another friend of ours, whom I will call Jay. But even though Dave's story sounded ridiculous, his voice didn't. He sounded serious. So I went to his house to see for myself. That night, Dave's older brother and another friend drove to Sandpoint to pick up a stereo system. I stayed behind. It was late. Everyone else in the house was asleep. I sat in a recliner beside the basement door and began reading The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. For a while, nothing happened. The house was completely quiet. Then, I heard a footstep from the basement. A heavy one. Another followed. Then, another. Something was coming up the stairs. The footsteps were slow and deliberate. They didn't sound like someone walking normally. They sounded as if someone or something was putting all its weight into every step. I stared at the basement door. The footsteps continued. Closer. Closer. Then the door flew open. I jumped out of the chair, but there was nobody on the stairs. Nobody stood in the hallway. The door was simply open. For several seconds, I couldn't move. I tried to think of a rational explanation. Old hinges, a draft, a loose latch. Eventually, I lay down in front of the television. I must have fallen asleep. About an hour later, I woke up. Something was moving downstairs. I could hear sounds coming from the basement, but I couldn't tell what was making them. I called out through the open doorway. There was no answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then a voice came from below. It said, "Yes, I'm down here." I ran downstairs. Dave had returned about 5 minutes earlier. He was standing in the basement. I told him what I had heard. He smiled as if he had been waiting for this moment. He had warned me, and now I finally heard this thing for myself. I still tried to convince myself it had been a coincidence. That explanation became harder to accept the next day. The following day, Dave's family held a gathering at the house. Dave was upstairs, helping everyone cook. His younger brother and I were in the basement playing Super Mario World. I asked him whether he had heard about Dave's pet ghost. He said he didn't believe in ghosts. Neither did I. But I suggested that we ask it some questions. At first, he didn't want to. I paused the game and turned toward the area outside the bedroom. Then, I spoke to the empty basement. If you are a ghost, knock once. If you are not, knock twice. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, we heard a sound outside the bedroom. It sounded like two pieces of kindling striking together. 2 knocks. We decided it was probably a coincidence. So I asked again, if you are a spirit, knock once. If you are not, knock twice. Again, there were 2 knocks. This time, neither of us laughed. We just stared at each other. Then I asked the question that changed the mood completely. If you are a demon, knock once. If you are not, knock twice. The basement fell silent. Then one loud crack echoed through the room. 1 knock. We ran for the stairs. As we rushed out of the basement, I noticed a strong smell of pine in the air. We burst into the house. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. I told them about the knocks, the footsteps, and the stomping. Dave came out of the kitchen and said he had heard the stomping too. His mother walked over the basement door and closed it. She pushed against it several times to make sure the latch was secure. There was no obvious reason for the door to move. Then she walked away. A few seconds later, the door began to open. Slowly, no footsteps came from the basement. No one touched the handle, the door simply moved until it stood open again. Everyone tried to find a rational explanation. Nobody could. Later that night, Dave went downstairs to sleep. For about an hour, the house was quiet. Then we heard what sounded like a child running through the basement. Bare feet slapped against the concrete floor. The sound moved from one side of the basement to the other. It traveled through the room as if an invisible child were running in circles. It lasted for about 15 seconds. Then the footsteps stopped. A different sound began. Something was scraping across the floor. It sounded like cardboard boxes being dragged through the basement. We called for Dave until he finally woke up and came upstairs. But it wasn't him. We could still hear him snoring downstairs. The snoring came from one place. The running had moved around the entire basement. Dave couldn't have been making those sounds. His mother called the pastor. Everyone else left the house. When the pastor arrived, he listened to what had happened. He said he had experienced similar disturbances before. He walked through the basement and blessed several areas. He also told Dave to remove a Rob Zombie CD and the movie Little Nicky from the house. On one of the basement walls was a mural depicting the 4 horsemen riding through a desert while bound naked women were carried away on horsebacks. The pastor told the family to burn it. They never did. The next day, we went to Ovando, Montana, to visit Dave's grandmother. The following night, we returned to Trout Creek. Dave sat on the couch while I sat on the floor. We were playing video games, trying not to think about the sounds from the previous night. Then I remembered the knocks. I wondered what would happen if we heard them again. 3 knocks sounded from somewhere in the house. Dave immediately told me to stop. I didn't. I asked what would happen if we heard the footsteps. Neither of us had heard the basement footsteps before that night. Then we heard them. Bare feet slapped against the concrete. The sound moved around the basement. It crossed the floor. It passed from one side of the room to the other. Dave stood up and threatened to hit me if I continued. I laughed. Then I mentioned the stomping. The first stomp struck the bottom of the stairs. The second shook the basement door. The third sounded heavier than the first 2. Then came 3 more. 6 stomps. Always 6. The sound traveled from the bottom of the stairs to the top. Each impact became louder. Each step seemed heavier. Then the basement door flew open with such force that later no one of us could understand how it had not broken apart. We ran to Dave's mother's bedroom. She came out and reluctantly lay down on the couch. I stayed awake in the corner beside the television. There was no chance I was going to sleep. About 40 minutes later, the stomping began again. This time, it was louder than anything we had heard before. It sounded as something enormous was climbing the stairs, something so large that it should not have been able to fit inside the basement. The stairs shook beneath the impacts. The walls trembled. I could feel the sound in my chest. Everyone in the room jumped to their feet. Dave's mother called the pastor again. He told us to play Christian music, so we played it through the night. The stomping never happened again, but that wasn't the end of the strange events connected to Dave's family. In the winter of 2007, Dave, his girlfriend, several friends, and I were standing in his bedroom. Without warning, something began striking the outside of the house. It sounded like a hailstorm made of gravel. We ran outside. It had snowed recently. The ground was covered in fresh snow. There were no footprints around the house. We searched the yard, but found nothing. No rocks, no person, no explanation. In the summer of 2011, I attended Dave's son's first birthday. We were all outside when we heard the sound of breaking glass. Everyone ran downstairs. A storm window had shattered across the floor. At first, we assumed the wind had caused it, but when I examined the window, every lock holding it in place was still secured. The window had broken, yet it had not been blown open. Nothing about it made sense. There had been strange incidents even before the Trout Creek house. In the winter of 2000, Dave's family lived in another house, about 5 miles outside Thompson Falls. It was around 10 at night, and we were standing beside the front door, getting ready to go outside. Then, 3 enormous knocks struck the door. I opened it immediately. Nobody stood outside. The snow was fresh. There were no footprints leading toward the house. Dave told me that similar things had happened before. His family had heard glass breaking in the basement several times, but whenever they went downstairs, there was never any broken glass. Later, I asked Dave's father whether that was true. He said it was. I don't believe what happened in that house was caused by a demon. I don't even believe in the supernatural, but I cannot completely dismiss the events either. Too many people heard the sounds. The basement door opened when nobody was touching it. The knocks seemed to answer questions. Something that seemed like a child ran through the basement while Dave was asleep in one place. And years later, we all remembered the same detail. 6 stomps, always 6. I have thought about that house many times since then. Eventually, I became obsessed with studying poltergeists. The more I learned, the more the events seemed to fit the descriptions of reported poltergeist activity. That doesn't prove anything. It doesn't explain the footsteps, the voice, the broken window, or the knocks. It only gives the strange events a name. I cannot tell you what was in that basement. I cannot tell you why the door opened, and I cannot tell you who or what answered us that afternoon. You don't have to believe me, and honestly, if someone told me this story, I probably would not believe them either. But sometimes, late at night, I remember the sound of those footsteps, bare feet slamming against the concrete, moving through the darkness. And then I remember the 6 stomps climbing the stairs. The final one was always the loudest, and after it, the door opened. I live in a house that was built in 1890, and according to my landlords, there have been 2 confirmed deaths in the downstairs bedroom. That detail has never sat quietly in back of my mind. It clings to the place. Before we signed the lease, my girlfriend and I stayed here a few times because we knew the owners and wanted to get a feel for the house. It has a lot of charm, and even now, we do love living here. But there is a difference between a house with character and a house that feels awake when it should be empty. The first strange things came from the recorder I left running on those nights before we moved in. My dad and I have done a lot of ghost hunting over the years, so I'm used to listening through hours of audio, but these recordings stood out. While my girlfriend and I were asleep upstairs with the stairwell door shut, the downstairs came alive with bumps and knocks. Not the refrigerator, not passing cars, just little sounds that kept happening in the dark. One recording caught what sounded exactly like a bottle cap hitting the floor in the adjacent room. And once you hear it, it's hard to explain it away. It was almost small things at first. Knocks, bumps, the dull sound of something brushing or dropping where nothing should have been moving. So many of them showed up in each night's recording that I stopped writing down the timestamp for everyone. I still wasn't ready to call the place haunted, so we moved in and carried on with life as normal. For a while, nothing happened that felt big enough to point at and name. Then I was away on business, and my girlfriend called me in a panic from the airport. She had been napping and woke up because something felt like it was running around her body in bed, like little feet. She said it circled her more than once, getting faster each time until she pulled the blankets over her head. After that, she felt a heavy pressure on the blanket, like a large fan pushing down on it. We do have a ceiling fan above the bed, but it barely moves air. Before she fell asleep, she also thought she heard the stairwell doorknob jiggling. I have always tried to debunk first. It takes a lot to convince me a place is actually haunted. I call it the H word for a reason. But this wasn't just about what she said. It was the sound of her voice when she called me, terrified in a way I had never heard from her before. Pure panic. Later, while she was gone in Italy, and I had the house to myself, the place felt heavier than usual. Being alone in a new house is bad enough. Being alone in a 130-year-old house with a confirmed death downstairs is worse. One night, I walked into the living room to turn on the only light downstairs. As soon as I clicked it on and turned to leave, our 6-foot mirror tipped forward off the wall and crashed right in front of me. It had been leaning there for months. It wasn't light, and it wasn't unstable. It simply tipped forward all at once, as if something had pushed it. I turned back into the room as it moved, and then it was on the floor in front of me. I shall leave out some of the other things that have happened here because I know there are probably natural explanation for them, but I still have no idea how that mirror fell the way it did. Right after that, I opened the downstairs bedroom door. The room I use as a studio, though at the time it was storage. And the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. It was like putting my hands into electrical sockets. The tingling climbed up the back of my legs and into the back of my head, while the same strange sensation rose through my fingers, arms, and neck. I wasn't even thinking about the mirror anymore. I only knew that if something had done that, it might still be in there. I have never felt anything like that before or since. After that, curiosity took over. I brought out the K2 meter and started doing EVP sessions in the dark. My girlfriend didn't want me calling out to anything in the house, which I understood, so I only did it when she wasn't there. I kept it simple, no provoking, no dramatic words, just questions. Most of it was nothing, but I caught two things I still can't shake. In one recording, I asked whether the entity lives downstairs, in the downstairs bedroom. After a pause, I heard what sounds exactly like "rent" in a male voice. I didn't hear it when I recorded it. In another file, I asked if it can knock on the wall. I knock first, a door creaks. I ask again, and then 3 knocks answer came back. One of our cats was on the floor at the time, and she sat up fast and stared at the wall where the sound came from. After that, I got a Wise camera. I first put it in the downstairs bedroom, hoping to catch something. But for months, nothing happened. Every ordinary bump could have been the cat's. So I dismissed almost everything. Now, the camera sits on top of an old record player in the living room, facing the same wall where the mirror fell. It has caught a few things I can't quite explain. One file is a thought so sudden that you can hear us mute the TV upstairs afterward. Both cats were with us, and we spent half an hour trying to make the same sound again. We couldn't. The other event is even harder to describe. I have caught bugs and other flying things before, but nothing has ever looked like this. It's misty, it moves, and then it seems to splash into the sofa. It doesn't look right. It feels wrong, so that's where I am now. I know strange things happen here from time to time, but I still don't know what they are. I'd love to hear what people make of it. An update. I spoke with a woman who lived here before my landlords bought the place, and she said it was her grandmother who died in the downstairs bedroom. She told me she never experienced anything paranormal while she lived here from age 5 to 18. But her niece said the refrigerator door opened when nobody was home, and a suitcase unzipped itself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and let me know what you thought about this story in the comments. Also, if you have a scary story of your own, you can send it to me by email or share it in the comments. And honestly, my goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers and get channel monetized by the end of this year, so I can visit haunted places, investigate them, and bring even scarier content to the channel. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope to see you in the next one. See you soon. Bye.